Space Marine 2 is the perfect introduction to Warhammer 40k.
Oh yeah, we're actually fucked. I hear no bell. You're dead. Come on. Who's next?
What is your duty? To serve the Emperor's will. What is the Emperor's will? That is my mankind. What is death? It is our duty. What is your duty? To serve the Emperor's will. What is the Emperor's will? That is my mankind. What is death? It is our duty. What is your duty? To serve the Emperor's will. What is the Emperor's will? That we fight and die.
Warhammer 40,000. We've all heard of it. Well, if you're here, you've heard of it. We've all wanted, some of us wanted to get into it, but have not been able to. And today I'm here to tell y'all a good place to start if you are trying to get into Warhammer 40k. And that game is Space Marine 2. In this video, I'm gonna be... It's mostly a rant, I'm not gonna lie. It's mostly a rant of me talking about how much I enjoy this game and how much it got me back into Warhammer as someone who is in it but was a casual about it. So thank y'all for watching, man, and we're gonna get right into it right now. Let's just talk what makes Space Marine 2 such an easy entry point for the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And the main point is the mass amount of lore. There is so much lore for Warhammer 40,000. When I first got into it, which is relatively recently, I did not know where to start, and I think this serves as a really great, general starting point for someone who has no clue, has never seen Warhammer 40k, because this game will just skip over, the extremely complex lore and kind of complex tabletop to someone who's never played a tabletop before, so they wouldn't even know how to get into it. And this just skips all of that and gets you right into the heart of Warhammer 40k a bit. And one of the main grabbers of the Warhammer 40,000 universe for me was the art style, just how everything would look in the universe, just how gothic it would look. I really enjoyed that, especially the ships. I love seeing how the ships would look in the universe at first. And that's funny because at first for me, when I first got into that, I really didn't like the designs of the ship, but now I really do enjoy them. This just gives you a good overview of the Warhammer 40,000 art style, the vibe of the entire universe as is, just how grim dark it is. It's in the one of the main taglines, the grim dark future, and the game does such a great job at showing that setting for a video game. And in this game, you're going to be playing as the Space Marines, which are like the poster children of Warhammer. Like, if you know anything about Warhammer, you just know about the Space Marines. They're the John Warhammer of Warhammer 40,000, and they're such a big part of it and such a great part of it that I really enjoy them as a faction. They are my second favorite faction in the Warhammer 40,000 franchise, but this game will also give you a good overview of other factions that are within the game, such as, the Tyranids, which are the main ones you are fighting, a hive mind swarm of bugs that are constantly adapting and evolving to be able to counter almost every weapon people have. Eventually they will, but it's just a fun thing. It shows how strong that faction is. As someone who is new to Warhammer 40,000, I genuinely have not really heard of the Tyranids. I've heard of the Tyranids as a faction, but I haven't really seen them presented in my experience. But I have not played any really Warhammer games that much, so I'm not a good source. But also there's other factions that you will see in the game, as the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, which you do see a lot in the game. These are like the more of the normal people, the more of the frontline troops, the less specialized. These are the ones who will immediately respond to an invasion of any caliber, and they're the ones mainly defending the planet. And a big thing about the Astra Militarum, this is my favorite faction, by the way. The Astra Militarum is my favorite faction, and what I love about them is how every planet will have a different Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum. They'll look a bit different. They'll have different weapons, but they'll be a bit different. I just love the diversity of the faction as is. and just how they're able to be different and be diverse, and how I think one of the main mottos of Warhammer, if I heard correctly, was that everything's canon. So if you paint your army one little way, if you paint your army wearing pink armor and all that stuff, they'll be canon on some planet, because the universe is so big. On some planet in the universe, there's an Imperial Guard regiment with pink armor, and there might be in the lore. I don't even know. There could be in the lore. And then another main faction that you will see is Chaos. You'll see this in the first game mostly, but Chaos and the second game. That's spoilers, but in the second game, Chaos is kind of the big bad of the series. From what I've heard, it's either them or the Necrons, but from what I heard, Chaos is mostly like the main antagonistic force in the universe. To explain Chaos, you're gonna have to explain the warp, which is the warp from what my understanding. This is from a dude who just kind of casually looks at Warhammer lore, so I'm not as familiar. From what I understand, the warp is what people in the Warhammer universe use to travel faster than light. They will go into the warp to get to a location faster, and in the warp is this chaos, the energy of chaos. The chaos factions are in there, and those chaos factions are constantly trying to break through the barrier into our realm. And you'll see this a lot in the game, especially if you play more Warhammer games. The chaos always will have something to do with the story, and I really don't mind that. I enjoy chaos a lot as an enemy, especially the visuals of chaos. There's like, I think 4 major gods of the chaos realm, which would be Nurgle, Khorne, Slaanesh. We don't talk about Slaanesh. We can't talk about. And the last one will be Tzeentch. And those are just some of the major factions. I skipped over a few, but this game just gives you a great introduction into these factions and how they operate and how they run, and it gives you into that lore, into the knowledge of Warhammer 40,000 without getting into the tabletop. And I know the tabletop is what made it really niche, and with more of these games being made, the more Warhammer 40,000 is getting pushed to the mainstream. And it's nice to see that it's finally getting its chance for a wider audience to see it. And then once you're finished with Space Marine 2, you can probably go to a game like Darktide, which is more shooter based as well, where you're not playing as Space Marines. It's a little bit different, but it still gives you that good taste of the Warhammer universe. And then if you're really into it, you can maybe watch lore videos, which I would do. This is how I got into it. Was I played Space Marine 1, and I really loved it. I played that game in like a day, 2 days, finished it. I don't think it was that long of a game, to be fair. But once I played that, I needed more. So I think I went to Dawn of War. I'm a big RTS person, so I went to Dawn of War next, which is one of my favorite games. I wish there's something more like Total War for it. For Warhammer 40,000, I know there's a Warhammer Fantasy Total War game, but that's just how I got into the slope. And once I played those 2 games, I started looking at the lore more and more. I'm not at the point where I know everything yet. I'm still learning a lot of the lore, but this is just how I kind of got into the game. And Space Marine 1 was responsible for this pipeline for me. And I believe that Space Marine 2 is going to be the same exact thing for so many people. And I'm glad. I love seeing more people get into this. I know people gatekeep it. Long-time Warhammer fans are probably going to gatekeep, but that's in any, franchise. I always love seeing more people learn about a franchise that I like, just so I have more people to talk to about. Because I'm not good. I don't have no one to talk about Warhammer with. And then, once you get started, honestly, I would recommend playing maybe a Darktide. A Darktide will be a good point to get deeper into the lore without jumping right into an RTS, especially if you're not a big RTS fan. But if you liked Space Marine 2, the more you see of the universe, I'm sure the more you will like of it. Just if you like Space Marine 2, assuming. And then, once you finish the story, there's still so much in the multiplayer that you can play. And in Space Marine 2, you are playing as Space Marines, but you're playing as the chapter of the Ultramarines. And the Ultramarines are kind of seen as the main character chapter of the universe, from what I've heard. And I know some people don't like the Ultramarines because of that, but it gives you a good base on how Space Marines are in the lore. And then once you play Operations and the PvP, the Eternal War multiplayer, you'll get to see the more customizations for other chapters. You can make your own chapter color. It gives you a taste of how the tabletop works. The unlimited customization you can do as much as your mind wants to. It gives you a great overall understanding of the universe and how the customization works and just how the overall community is. And as you get into Warhammer 40,000, you can start getting more into the community, going to tournaments. I haven't done any in-person tournaments, mostly because that is expensive. It is extremely expensive to get into. I mean, for someone like me, I'm broke, so it's expensive for me to get into. Especially the faction I like, which is the Imperial Guard, which is you need a lot of people, I believe, to be somewhat useful. Somewhat effective, I should say. And as you get into the lore, as it's gonna take you a lot to catch up, because they're like releasing, from what I've heard, they're releasing new stuff like almost weekly. It's actually insane how many books they do have. I'm not even gonna try to at least start, but if someone who's crazy enough to, you know, try and learn all the lore, go right ahead. It's all right there, and you'll be trying to catch up forever if you want to read every single book. And you don't even have to read the books if you wanted to just watch the lore through YouTube, through a channel that just kind of condenses everything. That's a great way also. It's just so much stuff you can get into, so many ways you can go about it too, so many games you can play. As I'm just kind of ranting at this point, is this turned into a rant? I have a script right here and it's kind of just out the window, but as someone who is, you know, just who loves Warhammer 40,000, I just love that people are going to be able to get into the lore just from this game alone, and that it already has more fans just from this drop alone. I've seen people on TikTok posting themselves watching new clips, learning about more of the lore. I also seen one dude who was actually, why is this man black and shit like that. But of course there are always going to be people like that in every community, and I'm glad. I hope the Warhammer community continues to learn, and I hope people use this game as a good jumping off point to get into the rest of the universe. And if you've made it to this far in the video, if you listen to my incoherent rambling this far, I really do appreciate it. This is something a bit different for me, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to do this again, because I don't like how this video turned out. But if this video does well, I'll probably do another one a lot sooner than I would as is. But we'll see how this video does, and if y'all got to this point, thank you. I really appreciate it. And if you want to see more content from me, like and subscribe, and God bless all, man. I really appreciate every viewer, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, have a beautiful time.